This is my wife, Linda. Everybody goes crazy about the stuffing, so I convinced her to actually allow me to video her making this stuffing. I really eat these gizzards, and for you folks that don't eat gizzards, don't be looking at this like, ugh, what is that?
Okay,
don't knock it till you try it. This is some real hometown, real good soul food stuffing with a touch of Panamanian. I don't know what the Panamanian is, but you know I'm gonna have to get that in somehow.
You have to stick Panama in somewhere.
Yep. Linda, what are those things that we have down there that I'm pointing at?
This is chicken liver, gizzards, and this is just some onions and bell pepper and.
What you did? You saute those?
Well, I cooked that in the turkey.
So you just bake that in its own?
Yes, I baked the onions and the bell pepper and the garlic, everything in big chunks with the turkey.
And what about all that juice that I see in there?
I will use that.
For what?
For the stuffing.
All right. How did you actually prepare the gizzards and the liver?
I cook the livers, chicken livers and the gizzards separately because
what is
chicken livers cook really fast.
So that is you cook the livers in there, right?
This is chicken gizzards.
And what kind of seasonings you put in those when you boil them?
I season the gizzards with salt and pepper, garlic powder, onion powder. I chop up fresh cilantro, garlic, onions, bell pepper, celery.
Yeah, the house was really smelling kind of good. That's what woke me up this morning. And what is this here?
This is cornbread, just regular packet cornbread.
Okay.
And I make the cornbread separately and all the meats separately. And then I combine everything. So this is the mixture where I combine everything.
So I guess what we're going to see is how you combine stuff now.
Okay. Put all the cornbread in the pan. And you have to crumble up the cornbread. This stock is the heaven that's going in the dressing.
And that one is from the gizzards. That's a stock from the gizzards.
Yes. Okay. And you pour all of that love right in here.
Oh, you sound like Emil Lagasse. You throw all that love in there. Okay.
That's exactly what it is. And then I come over and I put this in here as well.
So that's now the liver stock.
Yes.
All right.
Now, mixing time.
And that is?
These are gizzards.
And that's a chopped up gizzards.
Chopped gizzards, livers.
And that's the livers minced up real fine as well. All right.
Now, you start mixing it up. Now, this much cornbread is going to take a lot of stock. Okay, you just pour the rest of this stock in the dressing. I sauteed a few little extra veggies.
What is that you have there now?
I have 2 cans of chicken stock. I'm going to add the chicken stock to the dressing to give it more moisture.
Now here's this stuff, folks, funny. With all the fat that we already have in there, look at what you decided to go with. Chicken broth, 99% fat-free. Does it really matter?
The secret to good dressing is moisture.
I thought it was a seasoning. Now you're talking about moisture?
I prefer mine to be served moist.
Moist and wet.
Stop.
So folks, that is some very good tasting mud.
That's a little more onion and garlic powder to this. This is garlic powder, just a little garlic powder. This is a little poultry seasoning. I'm going to beat 2 eggs. The last step of the dressing. So this should make some nice fluffy dressing. One more stir. Just want to make sure all of that cornbread is
show me what section of that is Panamanian.
Right there.
All right, thank you.
So I just put it in here. Then I take my turkey wings. Place them. They really good.
Now what is that you're doing on the end?
It's a little parsley over top. I set the oven to 350. And I am going to cover and bake the dressing and the turkey for about 35-40 minutes.
Welcome to another edition of Politics and Rhyme. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Today, I'm honored to have once again the guy from Social Security. What is it called again?
Social Security Works.
Social Security Works. Alex, how you doing, my brother?
Wonderful to see you.
Talk to me, man. Listen, first of all, we are in dire straits right now. People are scared about what's going to be happening in December. I mean, not December, but November. What are your thoughts?
December 2, right? What comes after?
Well, that's true.
But yeah, it's a scary time. I mean, it was always going to be a fight no matter what, because fascism is on the rise around the globe.
Right.
The far right alignment with the billionaire class is real, and it's global, and it's here in America as well, and it's really easy to understand. The billionaire class have come to the limit of what they can accomplish by hoodwinking the public, by being like, just trust us, just give us the in charge, and the corporations are going to deliver for you.
Right.
And what people have seen is that means they don't get health care, right? And instead of getting health care when they get sick, they get a denial letter.
Right.
The banks are like, oh, come on, put your money with us, and da-da-da-da-da. And what people have seen is that means, they're getting charged for just the privilege of having their money somewhere. And these banks make money by extracting it from people. They then are like, we don't have to convince you to put your money in our bank. We're just going to financialize the world. You think housing is for living in. We think housing is for extracting as much money as possible. So rents are skyrocketing, right? That is when the public says, enough. The government has to act. They have to take on these corporations. They have to protect people. And that's when the billionaire class says, okay, it's now time to do this alliance where we take over government. We stop the belief in the will of the people, right? So it's no surprise that Donald Trump talks about the end of democracy, because what he is doing is saying no longer should public policy be the voice of the many. It has to be the voice of the few. And that's the fight that we're in. So it's real, and people should be afraid, but the threat of tyranny also embedded in it has the hope. We know how to defeat fascism, tyranny, and it's solidarity. So what we need to do is not mourn, but organize and fight as hard as we can from here until November. And then no matter what happens, the fight, the struggle continues.
Now, did it surprise you, the Supreme Court rulings that slowly eroded actually, I would put it bluntly, democracy, that they would give the presidency the type of immunity that they're giving it, that they would start for the first time taking away people's rights. Does this seem to you like some sort of an orchestration between the billionaires and the elite? I mean, the billionaires and some in the government?
Absolutely. They took over the Supreme Court. It was a decades-long campaign. They had a strategy to do it. The strategy was lie to the American people, right? You saw all the confirmation hearings. Every single one of those right-wing, bought and paid for judges looked square in the camera and said, I'm not going to overturn Roe.
Right.
Settled law. Right. And then as soon as they got in there and got the power, what did they do? Everything that autocracy wanted. So did it surprise me? No. Is it scary? Yes.
I want you to do something, Alex, because, you and I and many of us that are progressives, we speak in certain terms that the folks that follow Donald Trump, it sounds kind of elitist, okay? The Supreme Court did several things. It took away women's rights. It went ahead and made the executive supreme. It also did away with this gave the pathway to get away with civil servants not being able to do what they do with regulations, etc. So they are instituting these things, but people don't understand what it means to them every day in a bread and butter manner. How can we best explain it, including to those MAGA folks who, if they realize, those folks in Appalachia, if they realize what they're voting for, they will probably think twice. Not all of them, but some of them think twice.
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty of getting the story across is there. But what people should realize in Appalachia, for example, coal miners have been fighting the bosses literally for generations. Much of the birth of the labor movement happened in the mountains of West Virginia.
But now they are the people who most support Trump.
Because we're seeing a hoodwink, right? We're seeing propaganda and demagoguery. But it's also important to recognize what gives the opening for that. And the opening for that is when people do not see the democratic institutions fighting for them. When their material life circumstances are not improving, when they are getting sick and not getting the care that they need. That's the opening that gives people, they're like, well, why is democracy so important if it only seems like it works for the super rich?
Now, you're the exec director of Social Security Works. One of the things that fight, in fact, for Social Security, but giving health care to everybody. It is something that people in Appalachia, people in the ghettos, people in the barrios should be run into because, hey, this is what we want. How do you personalize that to those folks so that they will see that they don't fall for the hoodwink? Because I'll be honest with you, that is what I have. About 40% of my followers are conservative or MAGA. Mm-hmm. And one of the hardest things that I'm trying to learn the approach, I'm trying to learn, and I mean that sincerely, how to best talk to these people that they take what I'm saying, they build that trust in us to see that what these guys on the outside are fooling them about is just that, hoodwinking them, as you stated. How can we create a message for that? Have you been working on that sort of a thing?
Yeah, and sometimes it's not exactly what progressives want to hear because I oftentimes start with a shared hatred.
Right.
Because if I walk into a room and people aren't really there with me, some of the things that I start saying is, who in this room loves pharmaceutical corporations? Nobody's hands go up. Who in this room loves high drug prices? Nobody's hands go up. Who in this room loves Social Security? Everyone's hands go up. On the issues, the people are with us at not just small percentages.
Well, I like what you just said there, all right? You start with the hatred. I think that's what they learned.
It is what they learn.
I mean, I think that is what the other side is, and I think that's
what demagoguery totally.
Exactly. So, I mean, I like that idea. So
they are the opposition. They are the billionaires. They are Big Pharma. They are Wall Street, and they're terrified of the people figuring out that together we can challenge and defeat their power. So they rush in there with a demagogue and say, actually, I'll be the one to deliver what you want. It's not the billionaires aren't the reason that your housing costs are unaffordable. It's the immigrants. It's not the billionaires that why you can't get medical care. It's this other person over here. And that is the sleight of hand. That's the magician's trick that the autocrats play. But if I start by saying, who likes Wall Street, right? No one does. Well, let's look at who's working for Wall Street. Let's see who's challenging Wall Street. And right now, you look at someone like Lena Khan at the Federal Trade Commission, smashing up monopolies in a way that we haven't seen in 100 years.
That is what is so interesting. It's amazing to me. I was never a Biden fan, but I learned to love Biden because this neoliberal turned out to be the most progressive president in my lifetime.
In mine as well. And I came from a similar place of, I was not expecting much. But I, as you know, moved to Washington, D.C. to challenge pharmaceutical corporations, to dismantle their system and build one based on public health. A lot of Democrats have come and said, I'm going to get Medicare the right to negotiate drug prices. They've been saying it for years. I've been fighting for it for over a decade. Joe Biden takes the White House. I'm not expecting much. He immediately takes on pharma and wins. The largest investment in actually reversing the climate crisis that's ever been made. He is governed very much from the perspective of real, people, grassroots concerns.
Without saying the word. Without saying the word.
Exactly.
Which is a smart thing to do. And, and for that, I thank the guy. I'll be blunt. I don't know how things are going to work out in the end, but I think, like I said, we have to acknowledge what the facts are. So, Alex, what I'd like you to do is two things. Tell our audience, number one, where we are within the Social Security domain and the healthcare domain, and also give them some hate.
On Social Security, it's really interesting because Donald Trump is he's a liar. We know that. He lied about Social Security to get elected the first time. He's playing the same playbook. It's right there. It says no cuts to Social Security, including raising the retirement age. But we also know who he puts in power. We know what he does. We don't need to listen to his words because we saw what he did as president. He cut Social Security benefits with a process called continuing disability reviews. Every single budget of his destroyed Social Security. His gang only have one idea. It's cut our benefits and give tax handouts to billionaires. So no, that man is not the champion of Social Security. The Biden White House and platform is going to fully embrace expanding Social Security and taxing billionaires to pay for it. If we can get the American people, even if they only see that and they sort of believe Donald Trump, that distinction is huge, right? He says no cuts and not going to raise taxes on billionaires, and that's an inherent contradiction. Joe Biden's plan is to expand benefits, increase benefits for people, and tax billionaires to pay for it. It's simple, and it's what people want. On healthcare, it's even more simple. Donald Trump and the Republicans want to fully destroy traditional or original Medicare, the guaranteed healthcare part of our system, and replace it entirely with privatized Medicare, so-called Medicare Advantage. This is a system that's just insurance companies again, and they only have one way of making money. They take our money and deny our care. They do not have an incentive to provide health care. So on these issues, the choice is so clear, there is no choice between the Democratic vision for the future and the Republican vision for the future. And we have to fight like our health and our future economic security are at stake, because they are. And I'll end with a little bit of welcoming their hatred is what FDR did when they asked him about the banks. I think that's the way that we have to play this. The pharmaceutical corporations are going to dump money and say, Joe Biden is bad for this or that. Joe Biden and the Democrats have to welcome the hatred of big insurance and Wall Street and the corporations whose price gouging they call inflation, and just fight for the people no matter what. And that is the only path to victory that'll actually achieve in November.
Alex Lawson, Executive Director of Social Security Works. Thank you so kindly for being on Politics and Right.
Great to see you. Great to speak with you as always.
Absolutely. Jack Smith dropped all federal charges against Donald Trump, both for having the papers in Mar-a-Lago, meaning the classified papers in Mar-a-Lago, as well as the other case for the January 6th case, which was an attempted overthrow of the United States government. And we all saw with our own eyes the direction that Donald Trump gave to do just that. And in fact, hundreds of those thugs, hundreds of those terrorists that attempted to overthrow the United States government are locked up in jail doing substantial time. And their Führer, their leader, is now president of the United States again. Look, people get mad, right, when we talk about certain people having privilege. And Donald and Brother Van Bever just spoke about the wealthy being able to get away with much. And but you can't help but see it's a special wealthy that gets away with much. It's a special wealthy that has this type of privilege. This type of privilege to do wrong and have as the highest court in the land, says you are immune to doing wrong while you're president, and as long as you claim it's presidential duty. The last resort in our judiciary said that was okay. But the last resort in our judiciary isn't the last result in this country. The last result is you, the people, we, the people of the United States. And for those who want to blame the Supreme Court for having given Donald Trump some leeway, for those who want to blame the Attorney General for taking a long time before he started the prosecution of Donald Trump, that they may be guilty of that. But the most guilty of them all is us. Because we, after seeing this guy attempt to overthrow the United States of America with violence, with the death of an officer, with the death of one of his own followers, with the attack, with the dismemberment or the debasement of our capital, we still decided that we should elect this guy. In other words, whatever prejudices we have, we allowed those prejudices to elect somebody completely unfit for office. And now we're seeing it with the selection that he's making, which shows, as Kamala Harris had said during the entire presidential run that she did for 3 months, that this guy was not a serious guy. So now you get an unserious guy appointing someone with who claimed to have had a worm in their head, who is an anti-vaxxer, to lead our Health and Human Services Department. To get someone who has colluded with Russia, as best we can tell, to run our DIA, our Department of Intelligence, DNI. It is amazing. And it seems like we have Curtis on the line. And Johnny, I'll come to you after Curtis. Curtis is a young man who called yesterday, and we had a very good discussion as to why many in the working class, with all those things we've known about Donald Trump, chose to put a convicted felon, a rapist, and all these negative things that are not conjecture, but fact-based. But they still felt it better to put that in the office as opposed to a competent, intelligent person.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.
So let's go to Brother Curtis. Curtis, come on in, sir.
Yes. Hey, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning, my friend. Talk to me.
Right. Actually, I'm just trying to figure out where we left off at. But
well,
yeah,
actually, I don't want to go from where we left off. I want to start from the beginning because this is important. And let me go ahead and set it up here if you allow me to, my dear brother. My contention is that nobody bears responsibility more for having Trump in office than we the people. After all, we the people, and put him in both by popular vote, however minute, and electoral college larger because of the undemocratic nature of our country. And you said that there are reasons why many in the working class gravitated towards Donald Trump. And I'd like to know what reason. And you said, yesterday you said you were a black guy and you were a Republican. I find that problematic, but I really honestly want to listen. So I'm all ears.
Okay. Yeah, I'm former military. Colin Powell is a hero of mine. That's one of the, not main reasons, but that was one of the reasons why I became Republican years ago. Of course, I think a lot of us, black working class or just working class people in general, we look at Donald Trump as the loudest voice. And I'm fortunate enough to be in a blended family. My wife had kids, I have children. And one thing that I noticed along the years is that sometimes the loudest voice wins. Doesn't have to be right. And so I felt like the Democrat Party just didn't have a lot of the voice. They wasn't speaking anything that we wanted to hear. And in the working class, I've had some strange careers. So I worked in Brazil for 4 years. And one of the reasons why I always had a problem against this free health care, the health care that Obama tried to initially enforce, is that I saw how it didn't work in Brazil. And one of the guys was a close friend of his. And I've seen these hospitals close down. I saw where they ran out of money before the 30 days was out, 60 days, where they was allotted a certain amount of money. And, so that was just one thing. But one thing about being heard is that when I'm just talking about for blacks right now. And I don't want to separate that because I think that's one problem. That's a whole other problem. I think we should just be Americans, but I haven't been fixed, so we can't even, go there. But as a black person, I see that a lot of us voted, and I was working in a housing project during the time about 6-7 months ago. And I even saw that people who did go to work and tried to get work was blaming Biden. And I feel that the Democrat Party wouldn't show their face enough to even say, hey, look, this is not our fault, or we're going to find jobs for you. But instead, to a lot of black people who are looking for jobs and work, the Democrat Party began discussing other issues that we don't care about as much. And I agree with you when it comes down to this transphobia and all of this. I understand that. I mean, I'm not sitting here believing that, 2 million people today is trying to go get a sex change. Now, as a Christian man, of course, I don't really care for that. But I'm not hateful enough to think that this is a real issue. But the problem is when I hear a government say more about one other race or something else, another problem, and we haven't even fixed our problem, then immediately I'm going to turn my cheek and say, I got to go back over here and listen to this guy. For one, he's speaking more. He's angry at the government. Most of us are. And when that's kind of entertaining at the same time, it's one thing that we look at and say, man, I feel the same way he does. He's not talking the same thing we're saying, but he's saying he's angry at the government. He's saying the government is too big. He's saying that the government hates you. And the other thing about Donald Trump is that he wasn't afraid to actually say something about black people. That was amazing to me, that the Democrat Party, who try to use us a lot of times, are even afraid to even mention that name. Not like Joe Biden did 4 years ago when he got in front of TV and said, if you're not black, whatever he said. If you don't vote for me, you're not black. Yeah, I remember that. It's condescending. You're right. Yeah. So these things are distasteful sometimes that Democrats throw out there. And like I said, this is not the only reason, but a lot of reasons why you see so many people decide that, hey, you know what? I can't continue to just vote for these people. They don't have anything to offer us. And even if they do, they never say it. They just don't have a lot of enough voice. And anyway, I digress. I have a few other things, but I want to hear your point on that. I do appreciate your show. A lot of, things that you say, I do agree with. I just can't see a party who never really recognizes us I'm talking about honest recognize, not just for votes, where look at us and say, okay, we still have a problem here, let's try to fix it. But instead, they look at so many other issues first. Although you always try to entertain us with this foolishness like, shows, rappers, and I hate that type of stuff. We are exactly the same as white, brown, blue, yellow. We need our family fed. We want shelter over our heads, and we want to succeed. That's it. That's all we're looking for. And if
let me tell you,
at least speaks about that more, then that's what we use to vote for. Go ahead,
Curtis. First of all, you know what is unfortunate? I agree with everything that you've just said, except the healthcare portion. So let's talk about what we agree with. The Democratic Party is lousy at giving the message. You're absolutely right. And the reason why is the parts of the Democratic Party that puts out the message, puts out the ads, puts out the way that you engage with the people are a bunch of elitists who probably wouldn't know a working class person if one spit on them. So you're right. I'm not going to argue with that position at all. When it comes to being condescending to not only black folks, but to Latinos, both sides are. But it stings more from the Democratic Party, since you would expect the Democratic Party to try harder. And I have personal experience with that, which I've documented in my book as well. I think it's in my book, in my last book, where I said that as a black man, as a black Latino, Afro-Latino Caribbean man, and I specify that all of the time because I want it known that I have the experiences of many different ethnicities. Black, because that's who I am. Latino, because that's where I'm from. And Caribbean, because that's my heritage. Now, I have seen when I've gone in progressive spaces, I'm all over in progressive spaces with the Daily Coast and other areas where we're doing activism. And you're so right. When I am in the right-wing spaces, they want to prove to this activist that they are not racist. And notice what I'm saying. They're trying to prove that they're not racist. So they cater to me. When I go to the left-wing spaces, there is no catering. All right. But it's worse that there's no catering. As I've said on my program before, America has a disease that isn't based on party. And that is racism, sexism, misogyny, and all the isms. And it's something that the difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party is, while they are equally adept to all those isms, the reality is the Democratic Party is the one that talks about wanting to solve it. And that's why they get into the trans issues and the homophobia issue and the racial issue. That's why they take on all these other identity issues, because they want so much to say we need to get that out of our system. Now, being able to, when things are hard, if the black community is being held, have a stroke, listening to stuff about a trans and homosexual seem like that Democrats are not doing the job to help people that are under financial stress. But here is a problem, my brother. Here is a problem. When it comes to communication is an issue, you're right. But when it comes to policy, all the policies that Americans say that they want, all these policies that Americans say they want, whether it be health care, whether it be child care, whether it be stipends for children, programs in schools, all of those policies that all Americans benefit from, that all Americans are helped by, Social Security, Medicare, all those policies that are in danger on the Republican side. Remember, every single Republican that has voted that have come to power so far has tried to privatize these things. And we know what privatization does to healthcare. We know what privatization does to all these institutions. Because there's a profit base, there's less money to actually do the job. But because of all of that, those are things Democrats put out. Donald Trump cannot claim a success in his administration. That isn't a Democratic policy. So anything Donald Trump says worked in his administration was actually a Democratic policy not passed by him. And the only job Donald Trump had was to solve the pandemic problem, which he failed at. So my thing is, while I agree with you that Democrats have a communication problem, Democrats leave too many doors open to what they've done and what they need to do and what they're going to do. I don't think that applied in this last election. And I'm going to end with two things. Kamala Harris said, many of you baby boomers and Gen Xers are now taking care of two sides, your children and your parents. We want to extend Medicare to support you at your home to make lives better for you. Many of you younger people are having kids and things are so high right now. We want to give you extra support to get the things that you want. These are concrete, written out policies that's been spoken about over and over again. She said that is one of the things. Small businesses, you're a young man. You may want to have a small business at some time. She said, We are writing policies that will give you, that will allow you business credits that normally you'd only be able to get over a year. You'll get over several years, 50 grand. A home. A lot of folks want to buy a new home. Right now it's prohibitive because we have the vulture capitalists buying up homes, holding them, which cause prices to go up, and people can't afford homes. And which party support those policies? The Republican Party, that vulture type policy. Which party was saying we would solve those policies? The Democratic Party. So I'm saying, I get what you're saying, but those who voted for Donald Trump voted for not having the policies that would make their lives better, and instead now voted for a tariff that's going to cause prices to go up because you pay for the tariff. They're going to pass laws that make the environment worse. So what I'm saying, my brother, is as faulty as the Democrats are, I don't know if your mother used to tell you, you cut your face to spite your nose or something like that. I don't remember the phrase. But anyway, yeah. And one last thing on healthcare. Every industrialized country in this world has universal healthcare that doesn't bankrupt its citizens. We're the only one without it. And we spend more than twice as much as they do, which means any problems that you see in any country that gives universal health care, we wouldn't have those problems because we have so much more money. Anyway, come back to me, my brother Curtis.
I agree about the health care, of course, that's what you ended on. So the problem with health care is that we know we don't have, in America, it would work, but there's no such thing as that type of honesty. Yes, we have the money. Yes, we have the structure for it. But I know it can't work because we don't have that type of honesty, because we have really greedy people. There's nowhere people are going to just understand that, okay, I work every day, but there's people over here that don't work. This is where we are. And this is what I'm saying about Donald Trump. I think America had to face themselves. We are as selfish as they come. Like I said, I've fought in many conflicts, and I promise you, I've seen many different things happen all over the world. And one of the things I've noticed when I came back to the States is that we are some of the most selfish people. We mostly only care about our own problems and issues. And that's what I mean about with black people. This is why they were just so adamant about Donald Trump. It's not that Donald Trump was a great person. I don't even believe to this day that Donald Trump is actually a Republican. He's not. I think Donald Trump
He's not. Yeah, he's not.
Anything. You know, like I said, I do look at the Republican Party as a lot of faults also. Don't get me wrong. But I also see this, and I think this is for a lot of people because this is what we had to do. The issue is Donald Trump is America, regardless of what we think. Donald Trump is America, been in America for the last 12 years, roughly. And the fact that we don't want to face it, I think this is where Democrats are. Yet so many people, Latino, Black, and just other races, not even that, even white. You know, we have to understand that, guess what? What we believe is gone. When you talk about that disease, racism, it's not. This is who we are. We haven't made it as far as we thought we have made it. And I think this is a wake up to say, okay, you guys thought because Obama, for example, my father, he was proud, to see Obama being elected. I wasn't as happy. I mean, it is, I understand at his age, I think he was 75 when Obama was elected. That was great for a black man to see that. I understand that at his age. But for me, I wasn't as happy for a lot of different reasons. Not that I didn't like Obama. It was I didn't enjoy some of his policies second term, maybe not as much as first term. But anyway, what I'm saying is that I believe now if the Republican Party don't wake up, that they would not have another president because, for one, they didn't have anyone to offer either. If the Republicans had anyone, we wouldn't have Donald Trump. And that's what I'd say, even my Republican friends. So we're not in great shape either. This is a big issue because now Republicans have to look at themselves and say, what do we do after Trump? And this is why I talked to my Democrat friends and family, and I said, we need this to happen because you guys will probably have the election for the next 12 years. And that's just being honest. If you look at the numbers, if you look at what's already happening, then it's going to take us 8 to 12 years, I'm talking Republican Party, to even rebuild after Donald Trump. Because what's it going to grow on? Are they going to try to bring up another Donald Trump? No, they can't do that because Donald Trump is Donald Trump. So now you're going to have a Republican who either going to have, and we will see this real soon, within the next year or two. You're going to have at least one Republican to shoot at Donald Trump in order for them to try to get in place to run against him or to run against his party now, because there is a MAGA party, no doubt about it. There's a MAGA party and there's a Republican party. And now you're going to have Republicans running against the MAGA party, either trying to get their voice to be heard. And that's all I have to say. I do appreciate, once again, you listening to me. There's a lot of things, like I said, this is my opinion. I'm not trying to state anything as fact other than what I do know and have seen with my own eyes. And even that daily. I'm old enough now to know that I'm not trying to find...
Curtis, no. Let me just say, Curtis, I want to thank you. I want to thank you really for calling in and having a civil conversation, because what I get from you is that you actually are willing to listen, and you're not just a one-item voter. You're going to vote what you think is the best interest of your family. And right now, it seemed to me like you were looking for a shakeup. A shakeup is what we're going to get. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to get hurt in the process, including maybe yourself. But I do think a shakeup is in order. And I think the Democratic Party needed a shakeup to say, we need to move things away from those elite folks that don't know what a working class person looks like. And that's what I think that's what I'm getting from you. I'd like one other thing from you if you have about 2 minutes. What is it that you want out of policy?
Out of policy for me, I'm looking for, I wouldn't say healthcare. I mean, I look at healthcare a little bit different from the way you see it. But for me, policy is one thing. I think we have to fix the tax system more than anything for me. That's the policy I think we need to work on first. I do want to secure the borders a little differently from what we hear so much on the mainstream. That policy has to be done. We have some of the worst borders in the world. And like I said, I pull security in other countries. I know they do not allow what we allow here in the United States. I can promise you that. I've been South Korea. I've been Afghanistan. I know how these work. It is nothing like this. I also would like to see an opportunity for not small business. I think this is the issue on both sides. Well, mainly on the Democrat side with small business. I have two small businesses. And the problem I have with small business is even though on the Democrat side, we like to say, they like to say that this is what runs America. That's not true. Small businesses struggle more than anything to find a way for people who want to start business to become corporations, not small business. Small businesses are just that. It's a 9 to 5 with a different name. That's all. You wouldn't talk to me if I had a real corporation. I wouldn't be here at 4:30 every morning driving and going around if my small business was making millions and millions of dollars. Although they may not be doing bad, I just think that we need to look at small businesses different. That's it.
I think, look, I appreciate you. And let me just say this. At some time, we need to talk about small businesses. Let me just tell you, by the numbers, there are more small businesses hiring people than corporations do. And one other thing about that, by the numbers. And the other thing, my brother, is that I think what you talk about America as a selfish country, we've been preaching into everybody's head since they were born about individualism and exceptionalism. And those two things just harping on that, make for a selfish population. I don't think we're inherently selfish once we understand collectivism. In other words, working together, we can accomplish more than as an individual. And also, it's more pleasurable. But that is something for us to talk about a lot in the future. And I thank you for listening. I hope you continue to listen. But also, I hope you continue to bring other people into the conversation, because as a country, that is how we move ahead. So thank you so kindly, Curtis, for speaking to me. It didn't go as many of us wanted. It went the way some wanted as far as our elections are concerned. But the dangers are there. The dangers are there. As an educational institution, KPFT is designated to tell you the things that are occurring. And right now, our media is in trouble. Good morning to Anna Hart from Washington State. And good morning to Gayla Kunis from Georgia. Great to have you here in the chat as well. By the way, folks, and I'm going to put this in the chat, my Blue Sky, I've also started my migration to Blue Sky. Blue Sky is the alternative to Twitter. And what we want to do is make sure to get that baby well populated. So I am going to put in the chat my Blue Sky address, and that is at egbertowillies.bsky.social. Again, my call on Blue Sky is at Egberto Willies, all one word. Good morning, Paul Fleming from from Powder Springs, Georgia. Welcome to the program. Anyway,
we're going to start today with what's happening in media. A few days ago, our good friend Tom Hartman wrote a piece called "Will Trump's Return Coincide with the Death of Progressive Media?" We all must support and share with our friends those outlets where we find useful news and information. If we fail to do so, America's media landscape may soon mirror those of autocratic nations the incoming president so admires. A lot of times people don't understand how serious things are until they're upon us and there's no return. Unfortunately, when you are being indoctrinated, the procedures are very well founded. It's called normalization. Imagine 15 years ago, somebody with the qualifications of Donald Trump, someone that did the things that Donald Trump have done, both to women, both legally, economically, etc. Somebody like that wouldn't stand a chance of ever being elected. However, you start having normalization. You slowly change what is right. You slowly change what is acceptable, an inch at a time. Or you make something so outlandish a one-time success that people start to think about it as normal. Then you can get away with just about anything. And that is kind of where we are right now. Again, I mentioned this ad nauseum. Having re-elected a thug, having re-elected a person a judge referred to as a rapist after having been found liable for sexual assault, someone who has robbed the salaries of his employees, someone who has left contractors that built his building unpaid and threatened with lawsuits, someone who has stolen from, and all of these things are not conjecture, these things are fact. But that in the past, just one of those things happening, grabbing onto women's parts, just one of those things in the past would have disqualified anyone from the presidency. But normalization has occurred. We have normalized that is okay, and that is no longer something that stops you from being able to be president. And in doing so, then what's next? We've elected him. The degeneracy of the population, and that's the only way we can look at it, the degeneracy of the population that normalization has created. And you have to ask yourself an important question. How far will this go? How far will be the normalization of evil go? Because as it goes far, you remember Donald Trump in his past rallies would tell people, just go ahead and beat him up on the head or knock his head or whatever. And it's okay. Normalization. Well, the normalization is also aided by our media. I'm talking specifically of right-wing media. A media that once believed or would preach that the things Donald Trump has done made you unacceptable for higher office, but who normalized it? Who eventually said, it is okay? People, I ask thee, when does it end? How far does it go? Well, Tom Hartman's piece is a good start. He said, have you heard of that Comcast is planning to sell MSNBC? Is Rupert Murdoch planning to buy it? Will America's media landscape soon resemble those of Hungary and Russia? Without the right-wing media juggernaut, Donald Trump probably wouldn't be president next year and wouldn't have won in 2016. That said, the progressive media landscape looks like it might be about to get a whole lot worse. Comcast, which owns NBC and its subsidiaries, CNBC and MSNBC, among other media outlets, announced this week that they'll be, and that's last week, that they'll be spinning off MSNBC among others next year, and the consequences are already showing up. It was reported last week that Rachel Maddow just took a substantial annual pay cut because of the uncertain future of the network. In part, this probably reflects a belt tightening at Comcast, but it is also an indication of how legacy media, which now includes cable properties, are taking a hit from newer digital media, from social media to podcasts to web-based network programs.
In part, this is probably reflects a belt tightening, yeah. But the principal analyst and VP of content for market research company eMarketer, Paul Verna, told the AP that the writing is on the wall, that cable TV business is a dwindling business, and the AP noted is predicting future consolidation of the networks or acquisition through private equity. You see, these guys can all be profitable, but if they're not profitably growing exponentially, they're unloaded to the next thing that can be to the next organization or the next entity from which we can extract. Private equity like Bain Capital and large media operations acquisitions have long history of gutting media properties to increase their profitability. Yes, to increase their profitability, they've done that. Air America Radio, for which Tom Hartman, he actually wrote the business plan and which carried his program, was on the air in virtually every major market in the United States, having leased over 50 major high-powered stations. But he actually used to beat Rush Limbaugh in a lot of times. But Air America kept losing station after station as they changed their programming, mostly to right-wing programming. And here we are, the election of a president sanctioned by the right wing. Musk, of course, will be in charge of identifying those parts of government or institutions funded by the government, which means pretty much goodbye to NPR. NPR, which many like to call progressive, far from it, but like many call it progressive, will likely be defunded and dependent on external sources of funding. And likely those external forces will probably change its type of programming, which is the true, fair, and balanced. Anyway, right-wing billionaires brought us Fox News, Sinclair, two other web and cable-based right-wing TV stations, channels, nationwide networks of hate radio, now also in Spanish. People are wondering, how comes the Latino folks are jumping to the right? Well, mostly Latino men jumping to the right. Well, guess what? Yeah. And I've been talking about this for several months now. Right-wing media is saturated with hate radio paid for by the billionaires. So when Democrats sat down and kept on talking about demographic is our answer, demographics is our answer, a nurtured demographic is no answer. An unnurtured demographic is no answer because the right is always there and ready to nurture that demographic. And guess what the right is doing right now? They have successfully entered the Spanish market. And in so doing, I ask everyone here, please go listen to Spanish radio. Go listen to the ads on Spanish radio. And you see where we're heading, folks. Lack of investment of the left while the right continues to invest in your minds. Not to mention the entire network of billionaire-funded, hard, right, phony, pink slime newspapers that pop up around the country every election year. Tens of millions of dollars in subsidies to right-wing podcast hosts. Think about this. Grogan, 6 years ago, was speaking about Medicare for all. He was speaking about healthcare. He was speaking about education for kids. Grogan sounded like a left-winger 6 years ago. I don't have the time to play a 10-minute piece that one of my PDR posse members on 3 o'clock sent me. And Johnny, I'm coming to you in a minute. But Rogan, he was actually promoting a Medicare for all. Then what happened? Again, who are his funders now? Who is funding these operations? I told you guys last week, Politics Done Right, as an independent media organization, mostly with the progressive left, got offers to switch from the progressive information that I put out there to just become a right-wing stooge. Money, dinero, plata, capital. And I looked and I said, you know what is funny? At the stage in my life where I gave up my engineering company, my software development company to do activism, because I thought I found a way after my bills were all paid to go ahead and invest the good fortune that America has brought into progressive activism to ensure that everybody had that opportunity to move forward. But at a time at the lowest, when things hit pretty hard because of illness and other things in a family, that looked great. Going to the right looked great. Wow, well compensated. It could be well compensated, man. And then you sit back and you think, how do you look yourself in the mirror? How do you say, you know what? I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. I can't do that. But you know what? There are thousands out there that are willing to do it. There are thousands out there that have done it. And that corruption, that normalization that I spoke about at the beginning of the program is occurring, continues to occur. Anyway, there's no equivalent politically tilted media systems on the left. Democratic-leaning billionaires have stayed out of the media space ever since Romney's company took down Air America. The closest TV and radio counterpart we have, and listen to these small networks that we have as progressive media, what I call truthful media. And as Tom points out, it is Free Speech TV, available on the web, Dish, Sling, Roku, Apple TV, and DirecTV. And the progressive channel on Sirius XM. His daily program is carried there. I want you guys to think about that. True progressive news can only be found in very small spots. Of course, with the advent of Substack, a lot of independent media guys that have been dumped by the corporatocracy or dumped by because again they spill too much of the truth. They've now many migrated to Substack, which I am on now as well. Substack, which is and by the way, I'm at egberto.substack.com, egberto.substack.com. But again, you can also find it at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Many of us in the progressive media, because of cost, we don't have the monies to put big production companies up or whatever. So we become our own independent media spaces on platforms like Substack. And now many of us have migrated to Blue Sky and other places, right? But that's all we have, an ad hoc setup of progressive media. How do we change that? How do we ensure that 2025, when Donald Trump takes command of this country, that somehow when MSNBC is sold, which MSNBC isn't even a clean left channel, just sort of marginally left. But when MSNBC is sold, all we got, Free Speech TV, Mother Jones, The Nation, The New Republic, The Guardian, and a few other outlets, Common Dreams, Alternate, A Progressive, Democratic Underground, Daily Kos. There are not many sources compared to the right-wing indoctrination machine. And you know who solves that? Only you can. Only you can solve that by ensuring that you read and you share and you make people aware of all of those doing the work in the progressive media. That's the only way. It has to be geometric progression from the individual, or I should say exponential growth. If everyone shares 10 pieces of information every day that those of us in the progressive space put out, again, I repeat, if all of those who read a politicsdoneright.com/newsletter or a Tom Hartman or any one of these, if any of you make sure to share our content 10 times and ask each of those people to share 10 times, we start to get exponential progression of our data in the hands of people who trust you and trust those who you trust. It has to be grassroots going forward. It has to be grassroots going forward. Folks, I hope this little narrative, this little soliloquy starts to lay upon you the importance in getting the progressive media out there and getting you to be a part of it. Back at Coffee Party USA, at the time that I was a board member, we had a program called Be the Media. And what it was telling every individual was that you had to play a part. It was imperative that you play a part in getting truth to your fellow man. When you tell the truth to 10 people who trust you, it's much more effective than just them listening to Fox News because they trust you. That is one thing many of us should understand. So all of us must be the media. All of us must be sharing progressive media, and all of us must be remaining engaged remaining engaged with all of those, whether we like them or not, whether they're MAGA or right wing, we always have to keep that engagement and push that truth. Some of it will not be accepted, but keep pushing that truth.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where